Hello, this is Monday, August 9th, and I wanted to put out a podcast from things that occurred not related to RPG A Day 2021 over the weekend. I have a couple call-ins, one from Jason Connerly and one from Collin Green, and I give answers, short somewhat, to their questions because they asked questions maybe. And then the weekend of recaps, I talk about I have played 4 games this weekend. I talk about 3 of them because Jason Connerly and Arlen Walker talked about one of them in great detail already. So there you go. It's going to be a couple call-ins, some recaps. Enjoy the show, and I will talk to you soon.
Hey, Carl, quick question about your Warhammer game. Thank you, by the way, for answering my question on your Games of Thrones game. Appreciate it. And thank you again for doing your recaps. They're really great to listen to. So in the Warhammer game, mechanically, once that player that was gaining corruption, when he gave in and tried to let the demon out, even though he didn't succeed, that still kept him from having to worry about the mutation at that point, right? Just to clarify. I'm curious. I didn't know if the Chaos forces were fickle, and because he didn't succeed, they punished him anyways.
Yes, Chaos is fickle, but what I thought was great is the character punished themselves. So, no, he did still lose the corruption for letting the Dark Whispers take over. However, one, he is still only 1 or 2 points away from getting a mutation anyway. And 2, he felt that since his precious box was taken away, that was whispering to him this whole time, he's been traveling down the river, he's going into withdrawal. So he actually knocked himself unconscious during the course of the game session, since he was still beat up from when the Elven Knight sat on him, and he got kicked in the face by the other character. So he beat on the door until his hands were bloody, and he wounded himself. So he went into like a state of unconsciousness. But that's I guess that's what this game has inspired, is players are taking the initiative to play out what they feel is happening to their character. So I guess I'm pretty lucky that I have a great group of players. Anyway, that is the answer to your question, I hope. Yes, chaos is fickle. It's always there. It'll come back, I'm sure. And hey, what is the Elven Wizard going to do? We'll see. Can I corrupt that character also? Should be fun.
All right, Carl, mate. Really enjoyed your take on stream for RPG A Day month. Of course, it's placed me in a little bit of a predicament, because now you've brought these interesting sounding TV programs to my attention, and I've got little or no chance of watching them. Perhaps I can carve out some time for The Crown. That sounds pretty awesome. And Versailles has also piqued my interest. Downton Abbey, not so much. I've seen bits and bobs of that, and I've got to confess, not so much my jam. But however, I am inspired, and you are in the enviable position of being able to game with your wife. That must be really great for the pair of you, and good luck to you, mate. Take care. I'll catch you later.
Thanks, Collin, for the call-in. Yeah, it's great that Amy likes to play some RPGs now and again. Her favorite games are Call of Cthulhu and Savage Worlds. So if I run those, she's apt to play, although she seems like she's becoming a fan of the Twilight 2000 game, which is surprising, but she's really getting into her role as Kasia, the crazy Polish woman. So we'll see how that goes. Now, as far as continuing with the Call of Cthulhu game, I think I might use Arkham Unveiled. It's a product by Keith Herber. I think it's from the 4th edition of the game, circa 1990, it looks like. So yeah, that's the 4th edition. The 5th edition not coming until 92. It's interesting, the 4th only lasted like 3 years. So anyway, that's that book. And what I think we're going to do is probably push the timeline So like the paper chase was set in 22, and Arkham Unveiled is 1928. So some things have happened in the mythos, but the big principles are there, like Wilmarth and Armitage from Whispers in the Darkness and the Dunwich Horror are around. But I think the next time we play, what I'm going to have Amy do is, well, what has your character done in the intervening 6 years, and ask some questions about what has gone on, and then go into the book and look at the rules for advancing your timeline, which we've used before. If you remember in the Call of Cthulhu Invictus, although this will be 5-6 years, right, instead of 20, 30 what we did. So that should be pretty cool. I know already Amy said her character will probably go to medical school. And I said, well, that's cool. Arkham Asylum is nearby. She goes, oh, maybe I took a specialty in psychiatry and I'm trying to use the new techniques that are coming out at that time. So she'll probably do that, be maybe associated as a resident or whatever or a new attending at Arkham. And we'll go from there. That'd be pretty neat. So associated with Miskatonic University and Medical School. I think Amy's got a good idea where her character, Keiko Kane, is going to progress and go. So that'll be pretty neat. And there are lots of things that could happen. I guess what it does is it makes things cool for solo play because it's kind of a sandbox. And I don't have to really use prescribed adventures. And yes, there are some adventures I can drop in, but I can modify them based on what Amy's character does and how she explores Arkham and Lovecraft Country and surrounding area. So it should be pretty neat. I'm looking forward to it. So thanks for the call. Oh, I guess as far as Downton Abbey goes, so there is not a particular Edwardian scenario that I've seen that focuses around like some sort of country manor estate, lordly house, but there was something in Bayat al-Aziz, which is becoming one of my favorite zines for Call of Cthulhu. They do have an adventure that takes place in 1899, sort of Victorian Gaslight era Cthulhu towards the end there. So I might use that one as a prelude to maybe what I might do for Downton Abbey. So pretty cool. Maybe you'll hear about that in the future. Take it easy, Collin. Peace out. The ubiquitous sound of the train horn reminds us that it is recap time. I played multiple games this past weekend, starting on Saturday with a game of The Strange run by Webster of Roleplay Rescue. I'm not going to go into that one because Jason Connerly of Nerds RPG Variety Cast and Arlen Walker of Live from Pellam's Wasteland have already gone into great detail about that recap, and it would be redundant because I really felt that they covered all the bases and saw the same things. Sometimes that's not the case, but it's pretty accurate what they reported. So suffices to say, Xiomara Diaz shot things and tumbled around, and she did pretty well. So it was a good team effort. The other games I played were a game of Arlen Walker's Bone Crunch. Scratch that. We've switched to Hyperborea. So we're going to play Hyperborea in his world of his sandbox world of jungle wilderness exploration. And we're using the Hyperborea Edition 2 rules. It's actually still called Astonishing Swordsmen and Sorcerers of Hyperborea, but they just had a Kickstarter to make their 3rd edition of the rules, and it's just called Hyperborea now. And instead of one big book, it's 2. And I really liked it. I like Hyperborea. I've been trying to get that to the table, and I'm glad Arlen has brought that game back up. I enjoy playing in Kevin Madison's Reavers of Thule, and I'm definitely going to enjoy playing in this one. In this game, I am the Felix the Thief, or Felix the Rogue. Imperial origin, lived on the mean streets of the imperial capital, and now is trying to make his fortune in this new world of ruin and wonder. So we got to the main port town called Port Volusia, and I think it's Volusia. And then we hung out at a tavern. People were drinking. There was a celebration of a mercenary group that had gone into the wilderness and found some coin. And we were kind of poor and desperate and a little destitute. So a couple of the players decide, or Jason Connerly's player, so the people I play with in this game, it's run by Arlen Walker, live from Pellam's Wasteland, and I'm playing in it with the Jason Connerly of Nerds RPG Variety Cast, and there's a couple other players who do not have podcasts, and then Shay Webster of Roleplay Rescue is going to play with us, but he was unable to make it this last time. So that's how we do it. We don't mention people whose names are not on the podcasting world, in the podcasting world. So I guess my name wasn't mentioned before. Interesting. Anyway, we're in this tavern. Jason's character dressed, and the other barbarian character, Bomani, joined into a drinking contest while myself, Felix, and the scout, whose name, I want to say Titus, I think his name is Titus, kind of looked around and watched things happen. Those barbarians got into a drinking contest, dressed did really well, and won some money. Meanwhile, my character helped some of the more inebriated participants of the contest back to the room and took some money. He is a thief after all. Didn't leave him destitute, but also looked around for clues and waited a while. And Arlen had the guy mutter in his sleep kind of where the place that they went to was after I kind of probed with questions. So then I left, and now I had some intel, so we knew where to go. I proposed this to the party, so we went. And in the morning, Jason's character bought the supplies he wanted and needed based on his earnings from the night before, and we took off into the wilderness. The first day and night were uneventful. We had watches and nothing really happened. We got to this ruin site that looked to be an old aqueduct, and I scouted ahead, climbed to the top, found that there was some sort of nest, and it had some coins, which I quickly collected, and some stone tools and artifacts, maybe even a stone dagger. About that time, the occupants of this nest came back, and it was a couple of 8 men. I guess Arlen actually described them as Australopithecus, so some proto-human, or I guess that would be, in our world, proto-humans, so the genus that preceded humanity, or Homo humanity. And, the barbarians attacked them. I hid up there in the nest, ready to fire upon them if necessary. And I guess we were deciding we weren't going to talk and we were going to kill, crush, destroy. Bomani cut one down. Titus moved around to try to maybe capture one or attack one with his bolas. Jason's character dressed, almost stabbed himself with a spear. And then I took out the last one with a good shot using backstab. Yay, I was able to use backstab as a thief in an old school game. It's a hard thing sometimes to sell to get yourself into position, but I was able to. And Arlen is he's a player's GM, I would say, which is not a bad thing. So after that quick combat, we more or less stopped that and stopped there and collected a bit more treasure. I tried to do something cool and walk on a tightrope, but failed my climbing roll, even though I'm really supposed to be good at this. Injured myself a little bit. It was a little bit of hilarity there at the end, which is fine. I like it when people buy in, take games serious, and some comedy might ensue as through the course of gameplay. So I've definitely enjoyed Hyperborea, or I would say Arlen Walker's interpretation of using the Hyperborea rules for his sandbox world. It's going to be fun. Felix, we'll see if he survives. The thief class, which is, it's cool that they advance they advance quickly, but they don't have the staying power as some of the more martial classes. So my goal is to keep Felix in the back and shoot crossbow bolts or get a good backstab in, and that's going to be his thing. Although I guess he is the one who can find traps and sneak around and all that, but that puts him in, of course, isolated danger sometimes. We'll see how that goes. So the second, and that was Sunday morning. That's going to be a 2 p.m. BST, 8 a.m. CDT game. So early morning Sunday. it was a slot where Jason and I and others were trying to run an ongoing game, but just the players can't make it very consistently. So we made the executive decision to join another group because Arlen had a great proposal for his game or his group. So that gives us, critical potential play group of like 6 people. So if some aren't there, you can still play a game, and that's the idea. And I have games in the backup if we need them, but we might not. So he seems very excited. Arlen does. So we'll continue. The second game I played that Sunday, I guess it ends up being another Sunday fun day, was D&D 5e Ravnica. We're using the book, The Guide to Ravnica, made by Wizards of the Coast, D&D 5e, and it's run by Kevin Madison of Dungeon Musings, the Dungeon Musings Media Empire. He has YouTube videos and podcasts and all that kind of cool stuff. So in this game, I play a Minotaur Path of the Berserker Barbarian. I honestly can't think of his name right now. Trovik? Yes, his name is Trovik. And we started out with combat and ended with combat because 5e can be like that, which is pretty neat. In between, we had a sort of diplomatic roleplay session, and I guess I built my character where he's not really into the talky, just the action on purpose. I think I'll let other people do the talky for a while. And we have some players that like to do that, so I like it. I'm content to do that. Our first combat was against this big frog creature. I think that Kevin Madison has a phobia of frogs because we seem to fight frog creatures a lot in his games. So it's this giant frog creature that spits out lightning, and it jumped and pounced upon us from way downtown and attacked Trovik and did a lot of damage. And this was before Trovik could act, even though he acted next. So of course, the barbarian, as he rages and then proceeds to hacking, and it attacks, and we attack, and it attacks. We finally take it down after, I was hitting, right? It is bounded accuracy in this game. It was hitting my character, but at least I could get reduced damage, and it didn't hit all the time, fortunately. But it did take my character down below half. He has 50 hit points, so down below 25, I think 24. So, but eventually my battle axe started doing its damage, and I was using my horns as part of my extra attack, frenzy attack. So actually, what's interesting, so I learned a workaround, and I explained it to Kevin, and he's cool with it so far, which is good. But so, as a barbarian, Path of the Berserker, you have a frenzy attack. If you frenzy, you gain exhaustion. So my character as a Minotaur also has a bonus, and the frenzy attack is a bonus action. So my guy gets 2 attacks and can, as a bonus action, frenzy with an extra attack. However, I can also, if I hit with one of my attacks, use my horns as a Minotaur for an extra attack, and that's not a frenzy. So I think the first time I did combat, I was just hacking away with my battle axe because it's a big creature, so probably needs a lot of damage. And eventually my battle axe did enough damage. I think it's a great axe did enough damage. It's like a D12, and I was rolling like 2, 1, 2, 3, and eventually I rolled 10, 11, 12, and we destroyed it. And then we had to rest and recuperate. We went to the Trovik is a Gruul faction. We went, and there's a bunch of these members and representatives of all the various guild factions are getting together to go explore this tower artifact down in the underneath of the world city of Ravnica. And we took a break and met up with the rest of the groups there in like a Boros enclave that they had kind of carved out in the underneath, in the undercity, I guess, and met all the other representatives. We got on some boats to head to the tower, and then we were attacked again by these flying creatures. Oh, we also learned that the toad creature that attacked us, and these flying creatures were from the Cymric faction. So there's definitely not only other divisions in the Gruul, but also within the Cymric, because there's a Cymric representative that was also injured and attacked. So anyway, this was a cool fight, I thought, the second fight. We were fighting aerial creatures. My character chucked a couple javelins, but is not great at range combat and missed. And these creatures were fast enough that mattered. We kept them at bay. Eventually they got close enough where my character said, you know what, I'm just going to try it. And I looked up the jump rules, and in brief discussion with Kevin, proposed what I wanted to do. I did it. I jumped basically from the boat, and one got close enough, and I grabbed it and I grappled it. And that had Kevin exclaim after I grappled it and stabbed it with my horns and hacked at it or sliced at it with my hand axe. If you grapple the bull, you get the horns. I thought that was funny. So I did. I grappled this creature. It was in the air. We smashed into the water. And while we're sinking to the bottom of this stream, river, I guess it's like an underground river, but I was slashing at him with my horns, stabbing with my horns, and slashing with my hand axe. Eventually it died. Another one had come and attacked me. And see, I don't think I am quite the bad player, maybe, that I've said that I was. Because I do try to help the GM. I reminded the GM that especially when I'm in a rage, or especially when I was grappled, then the opponents get to attack me with advantage, because I am attacking with reckless abandon, and I attack with advantage. So they likewise, because of the recklessness, or because when I was grappling this other character, attack me with advantage, which is okay. I can absorb a lot of damage because I could rage again. And this time I remembered not to use my frenzy, but use my horns instead, which also made sense because their piercing and slashing doesn't do so great. Attacks at a disadvantage underwater. So there we go. I think I nearly killed the other creature, and then when it left the water, one of my companions shot it with his Chaos Bolt, which is actually a very cool spell. I like Chaos Bolt. I wonder if that's specific to Ravnica or not, but that's a neat kind of spell. So basically, when you cast a spell, you roll a 2d8 and have the choice of two different energies, and it's random. And so you could choose like you could choose from poison or lightning or psychic and force or stuff like that. It was kind of neat. It was a fun little spell. And then we had the other character who was a Loxodon bard, giving me inspiration and casting Vicious Mockery. So we took out all three of the... Oh, he actually cast a hold person on this one, and we were able to destroy it as well. So we defeated these creatures. We saw that the other boat groups had been attacked. We saved the supplies. And that's pretty much where we stopped. We're going to continue and see what happens next time, but I think it's not for a month because Kevin's going to be out of town the time before that. So that's D&D 5e Ravnica Tale. Trovik is kicking ass and taking names, stabbing things with horns because he is a Minotaur and that's what he does. He has proposed eating them, but I think that the other characters don't believe that he would actually eat humanoids or sentients. I think that's what Minotaurs do, right? They eat. They're carnivores, or maybe they're omnivorous. I don't know. If someone give me the ecology of the Minotaur. Are they omnivores, carnivores, or herbivores like a cattle typically are? But he is a cattleman, so maybe he's an omnivore. But if I recall correctly, in the classic Greek mythology tale, the Minotaur would eat the young princes and princesses that were sent down into the labyrinth, if I recall. But I could be wrong. All right. The last game I ran on Sunday was our Sunday evening dinner group after Amy made this fantastic shrimp boil. Actually, that was fun. I should just describe what we did with there. So every week we meet with my friends who we've known for a long time and we have dinner together. Sometimes we go out, and on the opposite week we stay home and play games. They've been wanting to play Deadlands. So this... And then what happens is my wife and my friend, they come up with a menu, and they either one does a main course, one does the sides, or the main course and then dessert or something like that. And it usually works out great. They coordinate and communicate recipes, and they come up with some wonderful pairings, which is kind of cool, I think. So this time what we did is Amy did a shrimp boil and got the spices and did the boil. Inside the shrimp boil was not just shrimp, but sausage and potatoes and corn. And I think what was cool is she set up on the table. We put all this paper on the table, and then she dumped all the stuff like a proper boil along the table and just ate at it like that without utensils. It was really fun, and we finished it all, which was crazy. That's like 2 pounds of shrimp, about a pound of sausage, corn, and potatoes, all gone. And then the best thing I think is not having to do dishes after, because we just wrap it up, the paper, and toss it in the garbage. It was really neat. Oh, I should actually. I know we have pictures somewhere. I'll put them on the Discord and on my Carl's Gaming Dungeon Discord pictures. We have food and drink and stuff like that on there. But after the boil, we played our Deadlands, and when we last left the characters, they were in Cheyenne, resting and recuperating, getting their stagecoach refurbished. Here they had some leads that they wanted to pursue. I think they decided eventually, well, for one, they still had issue with the sheriff here in town, and there were gremlins who were affecting the telegraph. And if the players didn't want to take care of the gremlins, well, every time the sheriff and his deputies would try to take care of the gremlins, they just repair the telegraph, and the gremlins would mess them up, and they didn't want to go out in the wilderness and find the gremlin lair or stop the gremlins. So the players eventually said, "Oh, we're leaving this town. We'll go up to Laramie, Fort Laramie, and send a telegraph from there." So that's what they decided. Eventually, what they want to do is, now that they have these clues that somehow the Hellstrom Corporation is involved in both the strange robot and this flying machine, they want to go talk to Hellstrom in Wasatch, which is in Deseret in Utah, or present-day Utah. So they're going to travel there, and they're going to follow the rail line, maybe hook up their stagecoach to the rail if it need be, or put it on a flatbed if they need to. As they go up to Laramie, and I'm going to tell you again, this was totally random. I asked them what they wanted to do. They told me, and then we traveled. So I wanted to check out the travel and how that works in this game, and not kind of run sort of a set adventure. But in this episode, and I guess I will call it Storms Over Laramie, a storm builds up. They travel, no problems with the stagecoach or any of the horses getting lame. No one gets struck by lightning. They eventually make it to Laramie, and the storm keeps up. So Amy's character, the agent Sam, wants to go send a telegraph message right away to her people. And there's definitely seems to be some complications. She misses seeing a group of soldiers go into the saloon where Jake and Hex are hanging out at, and has to catch up. And inside the saloon, these U.S. soldiers now. U.S. soldiers come in. Interestingly, they're 7th Cavalry. And, also the storm. I think I should backtrack a little bit. That the storm seems supernatural to both Hex and to the agent, to Sam. So these U.S. soldiers come, and they tell Jake and Hex there that they need some help. They say that a dignitary, a Colonel Benteen, is in town, and he has been acting odd, and he's saying that he's kind of almost in a funk and a repeating that they're coming for me, and I need help. And you folks, I've heard, come into town. That's what the lieutenant, and then he has a sergeant and a couple privates with him. We've heard that you've come into town and you're problem solvers. They actually use the term, you're part of the Legion, although the characters don't quite know what that is. But they've started to make themselves known. They are veterans after all now. So then this is when the dice start doing weird things to the players. There's a series of critical failures and things get out of hand. So the first critical failure is when Hex is talking to the soldiers and trying to get some information and persuading them. And instead of, when they mentioned Colonel Benteen, she says something about typical Union coward. And so, I throw sometimes historical things into my games, and Benteen, this Colonel Benteen, when he was a lieutenant, and some of my players know this, some of them don't, but they got the illusion. So Benteen he was there at Little Bighorn, and he was part of the wing that did not support Lieutenant Reno when he got pushed back in the initial assault, nor did he go to help Custer. And he is sometimes, depending on what sources you read, blamed for leaving Custer hanging. Some people say, yes, he was a coward. Some people say, well, if he had gone to help Custer, he also would have been cut down, right? So you can read those accounts of Little Bighorn and what happened. Definitely, there is definitely documentation where he and Custer did not get along. So it's probable that yes, he did leave Custer hanging somewhat. Anyway, that's neither here nor there. He is here, and both Hex and Jake are from Texas, so they fought on different sides during the Civil War. The Civil War has been over for a while, of course, but there's still tension and animosity. So this comes out, and the lieutenant challenges Hex to a duel. So there's this tension that is ramped up. Sam hears this and rushes back to the saloon. Jake tries to diffuse some of the tension, but instead spits. Jake is always eating, so he probably spits some of his food. Again, it's a critical failure. So what happens during critical failure? What he intends, breaking the tension, actually escalates the tension. So he spits on the boot of the private, and they start fighting, like fist fighting, but Jake is making sure that he's not injuring him. Meanwhile, Hex, who's got some hindrances that won't let her back down and makes her a little arrogant, squares off with this lieutenant. Sam is also trying to defuse the situation and doing a little better. Before the shots so the duel happens, the shots are fired. Hex is winged, so technically she loses the duel. But then Sam comes over, punches the lieutenant. That distracts him and shakes him up enough that when Hex fires a little later on, she takes him down. So now they're like, oh man, have we killed this guy? I went through the rules, and he's an extra. He was not a wild card, but technically he did not take over he didn't get insta-killed, did not take like 5 wounds. He is technically incapacitated. You roll to see if they fail their vigor roll. If they fail, then they'll take a permanent injury and they're bleeding out. So basically you have like a round to do something. And Jake, the ranger, subdues his opponent, puts him in a sleeper hold and takes him down. So then he is able to run over there and give him they got these elixirs from a traveling apothecary in a previous adventure, and he remembered he had it. So he stabilizes the lieutenant with an elixir. The situation is diffused, so the Sergeant O'Malley then takes the group. I said escort, and then Jake, the player who playing Jake, made sure I said accompany. We're not being escorted. We're not prisoners. So he made sure that was clear. So they go and they meet Benteen, and here's what I rolled. So basically, when I rolled up the storm or drew the storm, I drew a King of Spades adversary, which is a pretty powerful adversary. And the suggestions I gave were Los Diabolos, which are these demon bulls that come for the Reckoners to create a reckoning. And then I also had in that list U.S. Army. And then when I rolled like what is supposed to be the goal of the adventure on this encounter table, it was to help somebody. So, all right, and the complication was the storm, which is interesting. So that led to me to say that because Benteen had showed up, this reckoning was coming to him, and he needed help because these bulls are pretty damn powerful. So he was trying to recruit the players to help him defeat these devil bulls, Los Diablos, and things turned quickly. Right. So Benteen, I describe as a herod. So basically a herod is someone who has died and has been brought back by the Manitous, the sort of evil spirits behind the scenes. So in a way, these people sell their souls or give themselves over to the spirits. And I described this Manitou as a particularly like an insect spirit or something. They saw like roaches or maggots crawling around this Benteen fellow, and creepy crawlies, and it did kind of freak them out. Benteen was not pleasant. He said, you are a part of the Legion. You're supposed to help me because this is bad that's coming. And the characters figured out basically if these Diablos showed up, they would roll over both the Fort Laramie and probably the town Laramie without mercy. And it was all because this Benteen fellow was here. So I thought it was cool. They all talked about it, as an aside, like went out of the room to talk and discuss it. And I said, well, what are we going to do? I don't know. What are we going to do? But then I think they eventually said, we're going to just take out this Benteen and maybe that will solve everything, which is no mean feat. But that's what they did. They all look at each other real quick. Benteen is clueless. Like, I was not rolling great. I roll behind a screen, but the player who plays Jake can see what I roll, so he can make sure that I'm not fudging. And I don't anyway, and he knows that. And that's, I think, why they appreciate me running this game, is they know I do not hold back. Hey, if I get raises and aces on my dice, so be it. But today was not with me, so Sam and Hex, they, on their like sort of stealth agility to quick draw and so basically in the effects of this was I had the players all kind of look at each other knowingly and then draw, and this escaped the notice of Benteen, and he was pretty much gunned down. I mean, Amy's dice exploded for Sam's Gatling gun. Hex's dice exploded for her, ammo whammy. She basically made her bullet heavier to hit the Benteen thing, and then Jake double tapped and hit the Benteen guy too. And I had 5 bennies, so after Amy's ridiculous hit, I had to soak at least 2 wounds, use a benny to soak at least 2 wounds, and I had to use 2 bennies because I didn't soak anything the first time I rolled. And then I rolled and I got a raise, and it didn't kill him instantly, but then I had to keep using my bennies so that he would be alive, and then by the end of it, I just had nothing. So the Benteen thing was incapacitated. The hero doesn't bleed out. It's kind of the way it's written. And they basically decided, well, we got to create a distraction. So let's break this storm lantern, set this place on fire. And then Jake's like, I got some dynamite. We'll just blow up this guy's body and say it was an accident. And then I had Sam make an occult roll. She exploded the dice on that. So Amy was allowed to ask questions of me on how do we permanently kill a herod, and then she realized that you got to take out its head. So Jake stuck the stick of dynamite in the mouth of the Benteen thing, lit it, and then they just kind of casually walked out with no one noticing, making raises on their stealth, and no one noticed during the storm. Timed it perfectly so that when a lightning bolt struck and thundered across the fort, boom, dynamite. So they pick up the pace. They want to get out of Dodge because they know there'll be repercussions, and they take off in their stagecoach out of Laramie. But then at the end of the session, I basically had the U.S. Army 7th Cav now knows what they did, and maybe they're now enemies of the U.S. Army, which might not be a bad thing campaign-wise. Very interesting dynamic and gameplay, and they hear the da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da coming over the hill. That's where we stopped. Next time, probably start with the chase scene to see if the U.S. Army catches up to their stagecoach, their armored stagecoach. All right, that's it. Sorry for the rambly for the recaps, but I got interrupted a couple times, and I probably was a bit redundant or repeated things because when you pause, sometimes you don't remember what you said last. As best you can, try to remember. It doesn't happen. So anyway, there you go. Recaps. Fun. Playing more games this week. This week my schedule for gaming starts on Wednesday. I think I have a Wednesday, a Thursday, a Friday game that I'm running, and then a Saturday game and Sunday game that I'm playing. So there you go. Enjoy this episode of the GMologist. I hope you enjoyed this episode of the GMologist Presents. Thanks again, Jason Connerly and Collin Green, for calling in, and I will talk to you all soon.